Annie, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to be talking with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so it's hard to believe it's already been almost a year since Survivor 49 films. So how have you been since everything wrapped up?
That's actually crazy to think that it's been that long. You're right. It has been almost about a year now. It's been a whirlwind kind of surreal experience since coming off the show. I mean, all of it, right? So I got cast kind of last minute. So I was in the running, and then my original call was a no for the show. They said, we think you might be a better fit on a different season. For whatever reason, they don't give you a lot of information. And then 2 days later, I got a call and like, just kidding, we're bringing you to Fiji. I was like, oh shit. I was on tour at the time. And so there was just we had, I don't know, only a matter of a couple few weeks before getting on the plane. So it was very whirlwind getting, to the starting line. And then everything was just so surreal being on that island because this was my first time applying. And so I thought, in no way is this going to happen. I'm not going to get the call, so when it actually happened, I just almost couldn't absorb it all. It was crazy. So then you go through the filming process, and that has its own set of challenges and excitement and all the things. And then you come back home, and there's a transition period where you're trying to figure out, what is real and what's not. And then the season starts airing, and you see all these things you didn't know about, and you're like, wow, that was happening, and was not privy to that information, which is the case for everyone on this show. And so then after the season airs, you're sort of reprocessing everything, and then that brings you to sort of the after party, right? And so fans, now we can talk about our experiences, and so it's a whole nother set of, I don't know, reflecting and challenges and things. So it's hard to absorb it all, really. I can't believe it's been a year since I was out in Fiji. That's blows my mind.
Yeah, and then that leads me to my next question. Was there anything difficult about transition back into normal life after the show, whether it was the filming or the airing of the show?
It was, yes, it was a weird experience coming back. And I'm on the road a lot with my band, so I'm used to dipping in and dipping out of home life, right? Because at home, I live way out in the country. I'm an hour from Austin. I look out my window at cows, that's my life. And then I'm on the road where you throw me in a van with a bunch of 25 to 35-year-old boys, and we're trekking around the country. We did 40,000 miles on the van last year, and that is a whole different kind of life. That's a lot more akin to Survivor, right? Because you are just trying to figure out how to get by each day and get where you need to go. Where do you eat? Where do you poop? Where do you sleep? Do it all over the next day. And that's kind of what Survivor is too, with this other crazy component to it. So I think I'm used to the transition and the ebb and the flow of what life is. But coming back from Survivor, I have to say it messed with my head a bit. And I was on it, as you know, for a very short amount of time. And I think that contributed too to this feeling of, why did nobody want to work with me? Why was everybody lying to me? I completely misjudged. I was so blindsided when I got voted out. I went back and replayed every moment from the time I got on the plane to LA to, the time I went home, and was like, what did I do wrong? What vibes did I give that weren't friendly? And you just start to question everything. And it's not just about the game and the island. You start sort of thinking that everybody is maybe lying to you, and maybe everybody doesn't like you. They just want things from you. They just want your vote in life, and that's all they're here for. So I think there was some processing that had to happen for sure. And like I said, I'm pretty used to it. So I think a lot of us I can only speak to my cast because those are the ones I know, but I think a lot of us I think probably everybody went through that to some extent. And I feel lucky that I've dealt with a small microcosm of that in my own life prior to the show. But yeah, it was a weird time for sure for a while.
Do you think that had you gone further, you would look back on the experience differently?
Oh, I'm sure. And I don't know that means better or worse, right? Because just different. The longer you're on the show, the more you develop relationship with people that are both real and not real. And so you come back and you think, this person that maybe you felt, I mean, you look at this current season on 50, and, Coach and Ozzy had things they had to talk about from 15 years ago or however long it was. They still carry stuff around that may or may not be what would have happened if they met in the real world and not on a reality show where they're, gunning for $1,000,000. So yeah, I think had I gone longer, it would have been its own set of challenges, for better or worse. And some of that would have been great because I would have built deeper connections with people that are real, but I also probably would have been hurt even more by people where the relationships were not real and maybe I misjudged them. So yeah, its own set of challenges, I'd say probably.
Yeah, so we'll get into you and your season more a little bit later, but let's talk about season 50.
Cool.
So how are you liking
Okay.
the season so far, 2 episodes in?
So far, it's been cool. I think there's some things I like that they're changing some stuff up. I think it's time. I've been saying for quite a while that I really wish they would go back to the 2 tribes as opposed to 3. And I think that's a if you're talking about in the hands of the fans, they've kind of been asking for that too. At least a lot of them have. And I think in my experience on my season and why I relate that back to what's happening with 50 and kind of why this matters is I just think when you only have 6 people on a tribe, if you're not in the core 4, you have no shot at reworking your situation. If there's a very strong alliance in your tribe and you lose, those 2 people are getting picked off regardless. And then that's when the game really starts, right? Because then the core 4 have to decide, well, who's on the bottom. So when you look at 50, yeah, there's still 3 tribes, but they're bigger and they're throwing some, so there is a little bit more room for ducking and jiving and coming up with alliances and, leaving this one and going to this one without there having to be this very obvious delineation of power. So I'm liking it so far. I like seeing some of these players that have not been on in a long time and just see how they do in the new era. Because I think that was, again, kind of relating back to my own experience, that was one of my fatal flaws too, was I'm old. I'm 50. I remember Survivor back in the old days when the physical challenges were a huge part of what we did out there and, learning to cook a rat or, whatever, like that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen as much in the new era. It's a lot more of a social game and a lot more strategy based and less physical and all that stuff. So I just think it's interesting to see the dynamics unfold with people from back in the day and then the new era players and seeing how that, different style of gameplay kind of interconnects with each other.
Not taking into account how you placed in the game, but do you wish you would have played in an earlier season?
I think I would have done. I mean, it's so hard to know. You say, I would say yes, because I feel like the things that I contributed to my tribe and my season were not valued. It wasn't like they didn't care at all. They weren't like, "Oh, Annie, thanks for building the shelter for us, but, fuck off." It wasn't like that, but it was definitely not as valued as I thought it was going to be, because I thought, well, if I go in and I'm physically helpful to the tribe and I'm constantly just looking for food or shelter stuff or whatever, taking care of people the best I can, that'll be valued. I think in the new era, it's not as valued. And even watching, I can't remember who Q was talking to, but I remember the 2 of them sitting and looking at each other and saying that there's people just aren't like this anymore on this game, because it was relating back to the Rizzo conversation about, I'm not here to play camp. I'm here to win, money and be a part of this show. And that is the mentality of the new era players. They're not here to kumbaya, build fires together and go searching for, firewood and bamboo and everything. That's kind of not the way things go anymore. It's mostly strategy. People will deal with less of a good shelter, less of a good fire situation, less food, all that, if it means they can spend more time on the social game. And so I think, to answer your question, my skill set is, I'm not great at knowing when people lie to me. I'm not even great at lying to people. So there's some fundamental flaws in me as a person when it comes to being a good Survivor player, at least on my season with my tribe and my situation. But you drop anybody into a different tribe, different season, different situation, and maybe everything changes. I mean, look at Savannah, right? So she won our season and she came out second on this season. So, different game, different season, different tribe. So I just don't know. I never say somebody is a bad player because they came out early in Survivor, because it just means that there were dynamics that, were different than what it would have been on a different season.
Do you think that there's too many new era players on the cast? What do you think about the breakdown of the cast?
I think it's hard not to have that, because you know, this shows we're talking 25 years ago, people started playing this game. So people who were 25 back then are 50 now, and people who were 50 back then are dead or 75, you know? And so it's hard not to have a bunch of new era players. I think the way the game is gone, if I were to wave my, you know, little crystal, I guess you don't wave a crystal ball, but if I were to look into my crystal ball, I would probably guess that a new era player will probably win just because there are more of them and they do have a more focus on the social component. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch it and kind of see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I would love to see probably some. I like that there's a few older players, you know, they're more older players. I don't know what the actual age breakdown is because a lot of people look a lot better than what their actual age would suggest that or what they actually are. So I don't actually know everybody's ages or what the dynamics look like, but it looks to me just looking at people like there are more older players on this season, which I like because I like a bit more of a mix up when it comes to age and demographic. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes with the new era versus old era players that are on this season. It's going
So
to be
who
fun to
are some
watch.
of your favorite players on the cast? Who are you rooting for?
I mean, I don't really dislike anybody that's on the cast. I really I like Christian. I don't I'm not a super fan in the sense that I've watched all the seasons, but non-sequentially, you know, sometimes on in the background while I'm eating dinner, working or whatever. So I'm not somebody that has my spreadsheets and my, you know, I've got my draft and everything. I don't have that. So I don't know everybody's games from the past. So I kind of like that the whole thing is sort of unfolding for me like a fan, you know, because I'm not sort of guessing, well, I know Ozzy and I know how he plays. And I know, you know, when I talk to him at the watch party, this is his strategy. I don't have a lot of that. And so it's kind of fun to watch it all unfold. But I really like Christian. I like he's fun. He just kind of takes things as they come, you know, and he's cool. I think Rick's game's going to be interesting to watch that unfolds. You know, we've seen mostly that tribe right now, so it's kind of we'll see once everything unfolds and I get a little more info from how the other players are playing things. But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, everybody's a good player that's on there. You know, I was sad to see Savannah go just because, you know, I love her as a person. So that was sad for me, but I obviously hope Rizzo does well just because, you know, he's from my season. You got to root for the home team. And he's a cool dude, you know.
And what about Colby? Do you root for the fellow Austin,
I
Texas
love
person?
I love Colby. When they asked on my season, you know, who's your one love, who's your survivor love, your survivor crush, and I was like Colby, and then I drew what I thought was a Texas flag, and I think it was actually the flag of Chile, which is funny because I live in Texas, and I was like, where's this? Is it the stripe goes all the way across? Anyway, but yeah, I mean Colby's awesome, and I think he comes to the season, you know, I can't remember how long it's been since he's played, but it's been a minute. And he's older and wiser and kind of dad like now instead of like sex symbol like he was back then. So it's kind of funny to watch the whole flip. You know, we're all getting older together, all of us. And so it's kind of fun to watch him play. So yeah, of course, I love Colby. Everybody loves Colby. He doesn't love Colby.
So have you met anybody in this cast besides Savannah and Rizzo?
Gosh, who have I met? I met Q briefly. I'm trying to think down the Rolodex. I met a lot of people at these watch parties when I was touring around with 49 and my band was playing at a lot of them. And so very briefly I would cross paths with some of these people. I can't remember if I've met any of the rest of them on this cast though, other than my 49ers and then briefly
What about
Q
Ozzy?
and I did meet Ozzy. Yep, I met Ozzy, and he was lovely. I met him in I think it was Chicago or Baltimore. I forget which. I think I saw him at a couple, but yeah, he's lovely. I love him. I mean, like I said, everybody that I've met. What's been interesting to me about meeting past players is that you know you have this persona that you imagine from watching them on television, and then you meet them in real life, and you're like, wow. That is not what I expected you to be like, or it's I talk about this a little bit on some of my other interviews because fans sort of make their judgment calls on people based on what they see on the edit. They sort of make their judgments about our personalities based on the edit and on and on and on. And some of them, you know, root against us or they root for us or whatever. And they'll kind of shit on our personalities or our gameplay or whatever. And what I've realized is taken a lot of reflecting to figure out why do people hate me? And I have people who love me too, but I definitely have plenty of haters. I'm like, why? And what I realize is that if you're a fan who's never been on a reality show, I think it's very easy to muddy the waters and think of players on reality shows similar to an actor on a sitcom, somebody who's playing a role. And the difference is we're just out there being ourselves and trying to play this game we don't know how to play, and on television in our underwear, and pooping in the ocean and doing all these things. Like, we're doing all this stuff, not acting. And so when you have people sort of shit on you from the outside world, you're like, but you're shitting on me as a person. I'm not playing a role. And so I think it's been cool, to circle back to your question, to meet these people in real life, because then I get to know what they're really like. Not how they got edited, not how the fans view them, not what their gameplay was, but who are they as a person? And that's been just a really, probably the coolest experience of being part of this whole crazy Survivor family, has been that.
And you mentioned earlier liking the older school players. Is there some people not on the cast that you would have liked to see? Who are some of the big misses for you on the cast?
I mean, I don't know that there's anybody that's like, oh man, I wish this person. That would be more of a, if I were watching the season, I would say, oh yeah, that person, I really like them. I'm not enough of a super fan to be able to pull names like that out of my head and just say, oh, I wish that we would have put this person on there. I mean, I always like the controversy. So, you really want to fuck with things, put, Richard Hatch and Russell, and, you put some of those people on the cast, and then stuff gets crazy. So I mean, I like the controversy more than, oh, my favorite players who I would have wanted to win. I want the drama more than that. So I think the controversial players are even more fun to watch.
Yeah, and I feel like those kinds of guys are kind of steering away from those kinds of guys at this point.
I think so. It really seems like that's the case with the casting, and I don't know, who knows? This is 50. I think it's the beginning of a new era, and we'll see what happens after this one. I mean, they're throwing all kinds of new fun things. I mean, Exile Island comes back, and who knows what they're going to do with tribe swaps and all these kinds of things. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch it, but I do think this is a big year for Survivor, because they get to decide now what. Now what do we do with this show? So who knows where they'll go with it? Maybe we'll get some more controversial people again.
Yeah, and now in back-to-back seasons we've had medevacs. What do you think of Kyle being medically evacuated from the game?
I just think that sucks. To go out on a medevac is just, it's going to break your heart. Now that I know what it's like, to all the prep work and all the anticipation and the excitement and putting your life on hold to go out there and film, and there's so much leading up to that first day. And even if you went out later in the game and it was, like, okay, I got a good run, but to go out so early is just really, really hard. I mean, I felt bad for Jake too, for that reason, because it sucks to go out on a medevac. There's no way around it. I don't care if you love the person or hate the person or their game or any of that. Going out on a medevac, just, it blows. So it sucks for Kyle, and he's cool. So it feels, yeah, it's a bummer.
And then prior to him being evacuated, Jen was voted out. The first person to play Survivor in the first season, she's first voted out.
Yeah. I mean, that just, maybe it goes back to old school gameplay versus new school. I don't know. I think she's sort of the sacrificial lamb too, because I don't think anybody has really, really solidified what they're doing. I think we have some loose alliances that may, Suri and Ozzy say they're in it for forever, and maybe they are. But you know how it is. It's Survivor. That could change in one episode. So yeah, we'll see. I like I say, I think they had to pick somebody. On our season, it was Nicole, and Nicole is awesome. And it was just, had to pick somebody. I mean, she's now one of my closest friends from the cast. I think she's amazing, and she had so much to contribute. And we didn't really get to experience a lot of that because she just wasn't there long enough, but somebody had to go first. And so you're almost just kind of like, well, shit, this one. And so I kind of think even on 50, where the strategy starts probably at a much higher level from day one, because they're not having to figure out what to do. They know what to do, and they're on it immediately, but still they just got to pick somebody. So.
Yeah. And then we saw Savannah get voted out next. What did you think of Savannah and RZA coming in playing back to back? Did they have a target in their back? How would you play with people coming back to back?
I think that's a tricky one. I mean, I think my personal take is that putting anybody from 49 on 50, no matter how well they did, how great their personalities are, any of that, messed with 49 a little bit, because people were like, well, obviously these people did well, they're on 50. And so it sort of took, in my opinion, which is just one person, but it took a little bit away from 49 to put people on 50 from 49. no shade on those players. They're great players, and they deserve to be there. But I think I don't know, I was thinking about this. It could be considered a positive or a negative coming from 49 on to 50 where nobody has seen your game. So they haven't seen your game. They don't know you. They don't know if they can trust you or want to work with you because they've never met you before. They've never even seen you before, except for maybe from the trailers. And so that could help or hinder because you can go in there and either play the same game you played on 49 and see if it works again, or you can go in there with a whole different strategy and nobody's going to know what your previous gameplay was. So you could repeat exactly what you did the first time. And again, different season, different players, different tribes, everything. So I don't think it works like that. I don't think you can take your game and just drop it in. Although Sari kind of does. She kind of plays the same game every time and she still keeps people do not vote her out. So, I mean, maybe it works. If you've got a really good social game, maybe that does continue to work on back to back seasons. But I don't know how I would have felt if I were put on 50 straight from 49 because it would just, I guess, depend on how Savannah, I would imagine having won the season was like, well, I know that this worked. Let me try it again. But I wasn't on her tribe. So I don't really know what all of her strategy was, early on that kept her versus getting her voted out this time. If I were to guess, I think it was just that people didn't know her. They didn't know, they hadn't seen the season. They had never interacted with her at watch parties. These guys have, lots of people have known each other for years and years and years and decades at this point, so they're going to, anything familiar out there feels huge when you're out on that island because that's what, we've talked a little bit about in the past, some of the shenanigans that were going on in our season with the pregame and stuff. And the reason it matters is because any little bit of connection with somebody is so much bigger out there than it is in the real world. You make eye contact with somebody at the grocery store, you never even think twice about it. You make eye contact with somebody in Ponderosa before you go to the island, it's like, oh, they love me. We're getting married tomorrow. And so it's so different out there. So anyway, I would imagine that was probably the thing that worked most against her. And I would imagine that had Rizzo's tribe been the one to go to tribal, that he would have probably been high up there on the chopping block too, just for that same reason. People just don't know him. They don't know him from TV. They don't know him from real life. And he's the new guy. And they're like, who are you? You're an easy vote out. So I think that's probably why she suffered.
I don't know if you saw this, but Sophie B had said in an interview that Savannah and Rizzo, that they were going to plan to lie going into the season, that Savannah got 5th and that Rizzo lost the fire, which she did. But then she said that she got word that somebody from 47 had actually leaked the 49 boot list. So that's why a lot of the cast knew Savannah had won. Did you hear about this, that the 49 boot list got leaked by someone on 47?
I didn't know that was the case. Interesting. I mean, I always assumed, and I don't know, I stay completely out of Reddit because it is a cesspool of horrible over there. For sometimes it's some nice things, and a lot of times it's just people ranting about terrible stuff. So I kind of stay out of that world. My assumption was that people knew that Savannah won because she was on 50. It just feels like one of the two of them won, and they both, probably did well. Certainly didn't get voted out, early on. So that was my assumption, was people just figured it out from that. As far as people, leaking the boot list. I mean, I can't imagine why another player would do that. We've all been through this. You'd have to be super bitter for whatever reason against CBS and casting, and why would anybody feel like that? I don't care if you go out first or last, or what your experience was out there. They gave us such a cool opportunity to be part of this thing. So I can't imagine why any player would undercut a company that's given us such a cool opportunity. So I hope that that's not true. I hope that it didn't actually get leaked.
Yeah, and I thought after this episode that you were a great person to talk to, because your tribe, you lost the first two tribal, the immunities, and then Savannah's tribe also was first two. So since Savannah was voted out second, you were voted second, does that mean you're going to win the next time you play? You're going to be like Savannah?
Obviously that. Definitely. I would love to play again too. I think my season was a little funky, and it was just some of the tribe dynamics were a little bit funky. And I just think I would love the opportunity to play again. I think the thing that bums me out more than anything is that my best skill set for Survivor. Again, not great at lying to people or being lied to, like I knowing when they lie to me. So it's a detriment for sure. But I can suffer, man. I can suffer through eating, whatever, water, whatever, heat, whatever, sleep, whatever. I've lived the van life and done tons of mountaineering and solo adventure races, out in the woods for days and days and days on end, just living off whatever I can find. Like I can suffer through anything. And I didn't get tested on that. And I think that as people get weaker and struggle more with the heat or the lack of food or whatever, that would have put me on a little bit more equal footing with them, from like a physicality perspective. And so I was really hoping I was going to be able to last longer to try to use that strength. So I don't know. I hope I get a chance at some point to go back out there, because I think I had a lot more game in me, and it was a bummer to get booted so soon.
If you were on season 50, who do you think that you would want to align with?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I almost feel at this point like you're an idiot if you don't align with Cherie, because she's done so well every time she plays. I know she doesn't win, but she'll take people with her. She's very loyal, and she's really good at convincing people to do things. And she's not physically a threat at all, as we've seen, and yet people still don't vote her out. I mean, look at my season. Blue Sophie was not a physical threat at all. And if anything, she was a massive hindrance in a lot of challenges. And yet there she sat at final tribal, so people just, I think you've got to look at the whole picture when you decide who you align with. And so I guess if I were there, the smart bet would probably be to align with Cherie, even though I'm like, she's played so many times and she hasn't won. What are we doing? And you guys are falling for her thing again. I mean, I haven't met her in person. I would love to meet her, because I bet she's the sweetest, coolest chick, but I just think it's funny that people like just let her keep going. I'm like, do you not see what she's doing here?
So do you have a winner pick? Is Cherie your winner pick?
No, I don't think Cherie's. I mean, you got to look at history is the biggest predictor of the future, right? So one would argue that if it's been however many 4 or 5 times at this point, I don't think she's going to win, but I do think she'll go far, as she always does. I don't know. I think Ozzy. Ozzy's my pick.
Well, I think you could argue the same thing. It's his 5th time. He hasn't won yet. You could say the same thing.
It's true. But I think he's got a little more. I don't know. I don't even know if he's my solid pick. I have to see a little bit more of the tribe dynamics and the gameplay before I could. This is sort of an off the cuff, and I've met him, so that probably plays into my own, I like him, he's so nice, he was great to me at the, he's so nice to me at the watch parties. So that's probably playing into it for me a little bit. But there are so many good players on this season. I'm sort of I kind of reserve judgment until about midway through, and then I start to see who the real strong strategists are and who's really contributing to the tribes the most. And then I'll probably come back with a more solid pick, like 4 or 5 seasons or 4 or 5 episodes in. It was probably where I would really know who my pick is.
So is there anything else about 50 you want to talk about before we get into you and your season a little bit?
I don't think so. I just think it's going to be a cool season, and I like that they're switching some stuff up, and I like that they put some, really good players on this thing, and it's going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Do you think the success so far 50 is going to make them want to do more returning player seasons soon?
They've done them before, right? And so it just depends on. I think the returning player thing is sort of novel, and it's cool to do it like this. It was like the Winners at War one. They put everybody together, all the hits, it's like a greatest hits album. You put it all together, but you don't need to create 80 greatest hits albums, because people just are like, give me something new. So I think my preference, I would actually, and I'm obviously biased on this, but I would like to see an early boot season, because again, you just don't know how people are going to play on different seasons. And it might be kind of cool to watch people who are really early. And it's not that, nobody that they've ever put on returning season players are not early boots, but I think an all early boot season could be just fun to watch. and kind of interesting because everybody messed up in some way. So, how do they not mess up again and see if they can go further this time? And what did they learn from their mess ups? Because I guarantee you, everybody that came out early goes back and sits and thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks more than people who, obviously the ones who won. Now, the people who come in second or third might do that same thing because they go back and they're like, where did I go? How did I not convince the jury to vote for me? But yeah, I think an early boot season could be cool. But other than that, I would just like to see them switching up a little bit more, less about the players, more about the location, the challenges, because they have been in Fiji for a long time. A lot of the challenges are sort of, they're built out there so they can reuse them. So I think some newness, and I think they're going to do some of that with 50. I think we'll see. I don't know anything about 50. I've purposely not asked anybody from old cast. I don't want to know anything. I just want to let it unfold and watch it, like a fan would.
So you getting in the show, your casting story, you touched on it a little bit earlier. You went through the process once. So tell me, how did you get interested in going on Survivor in the first place?
Well, I have loved this show since the beginning. I remember watching the first episode and the first season with Richard Hatch just getting naked on TV, and we were all like, can you do that? And it was so different than anything else on television at the time. And we had, I can't remember the order of when everything started coming out, but Real World was coming out around. There were a couple of reality shows, but Survivor was just so different and cool. And somebody who loves I spend as much time as I can outside. I'm outside every day. I'm always out in the woods, hiking, doing all the stuff. So for me, that appealed. The idea of just living off, the wilderness was so cool. So I think I've always been interested in the show, and I never thought about applying until very recently when I was at a time in my life when I could, because my company was in a pretty stable place where I could be gone for a period of time. My band is solid, so I wasn't worried that if I'm gone for a month, I'm going to lose all my bandmates because they're not getting, tours for a month. So I was in a position in life where I felt like I could apply. And so that was why I did it when I did it. And then I thought there's no way they're going to call me. And then when they called me, I was shocked. And so, you take that phone call. So anyway, it was cool. It's been cool to be a part of the whole thing.
Yeah, lots of people take some years and years and years to get on the show. So what do you think it says about you, someone who goes through the process one time, just get on the show like that, like it's nothing,
Well, I think finding people who are 50 years old going on 9 is hard. As you can see from my background, there's all my Annie stuff, all my coats and my tutus and my, so I think it's a little shallower over here where I live at 50 to find people who, one, want to do it, and two, can do it, and are really excited by the adventure of it all. I mean, we're certainly out here. That was part of my reason for wanting to go on the show, frankly, was to say, hey, I can do fun adventures in my backyard every day. But what I want to do is be a role model for other middle-aged women who maybe think they can't do something like this. And so I was bummed more than anything to go out early because I felt like I had let them down in some way. And I think that's a tough pill to swallow when you're like, I'm going out there to show people that 50-year-old women are relevant. We can do it. And then you immediately get the boot and you're like, well, shit, but you could do it. Even though I couldn't, you can. So I think that was hard, but I do think that was a big reason for going on the show in the first place. And I am super happy I went. I loved the experience. I loved being a part of it. And again, I would play again in a second.
Did you have any expectations on how you thought you would do in the game? Do you think you'd get far? How did you think you would do?
It's funny, when I had made my original video and I said, I'm either going to do great or I'm going to do terrible. And I don't think I'm going to be middle of the road. This is going to be, I'm going to get this thing figured out right from day one, or I'm going to be out of there. And so I'm a confident human being. So in my mind, I was like, I got this figured out. I manage people for a living, right? I have a company with a ton of employees and I have a band. So I'm doing all of this, public interaction and talking to fans and all this stuff. I know how to talk to people. I know how to relate to people of all ages because I do that every day. So in my mind, I was like, oh, that skill is going to translate. But I forgot about the lying piece. The lying piece was tough because I just don't know. I expect that people are telling me, because I tell people what I really think. And I'm pretty open book and very candid with people in my life. And so I just sort of expected that that's how people are. And I mean, I've watched the show so much. And I know that's not how it is out there, but in your mind, you don't really put it together until you're in the environment. So, so yeah, I mean, I thought I would do, like I said, I thought I would either do terrible or I would do really, really well. But leaned towards I'm gonna crush it out there. I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna work super hard physically. I'm gonna make friends with everybody, and I'm gonna find my alliance. And I think, like I said, I executed on my plan. It just didn't work on that tribe in that season. But I probably wouldn't change. Obviously, if I had, could do a redo on my season, my tribe, everything else, I would change some things. But I think that my strategy for the game was not necessarily flawed. It just didn't work in the context of that season.
So being that you thought you'd do either really well or really bad, being the second boot, was that a tough pill to swallow, and how long did it take to process that?
It was, yeah. I mean, yes, it's still a little hard to watch the season. I was at a watch party on my boot episode, and it was the best way that I could have spent that time, because I knew I was going to feel some things, and I was around, most of my cast was there, which was awesome. We were in Boston, and it was a huge watch party, and Bryce and Wynn were hosting, and my band played, and my family was there, and all these fans were there, whether they liked me or hated me, it didn't matter. They were respectful of me regardless, and it was such a cool moment. But I also couldn't watch. I'm like, oh God, she just called me a Karen. Oh God, they're talking about me. Oh God, I can't see that, because my reality is so different than what I see up there. And my reality with these players is so different. I'm good with everybody on my cast. I don't fault Sophie for calling me a Karen. She didn't know me. She didn't know. She knows now that all the things I was doing were just out of love for my tribe. And I'm like, I really wanted us to win. I wanted to help. I wanted to be helpful. And, people can look at that as being bossy and controlling. And I'm like, I'm just trying to build a shelter here, guys, because somebody's got to do it. I'll do it. I don't mind. But like, somebody's got to, you can't have all, I don't think you can say the Chiefs and Indians reference anymore, but you know what I mean? Like, somebody's got to be the boss, and somebody's got to, tell people, hey, do this, do that, when it comes to things like building a shelter or going finding food or whatever, because otherwise everyone just kind of looks at each other like, I've never been out in the woods before. What do we do? So I was trying to be helpful, and so I think now I'm good with it, with my cast, and I'm good with, I've processed what happened, but it is, it's tough coming out so early. You can't help, but I was completely blindsided, like I mentioned already. And so it took some time to even absorb what was happening. It was a couple of days where I was just sitting there like, wait, how am I not in the game still? This, like, I don't even understand what's going on, because I just didn't see it coming. So that was tough. But once I processed it and I kind of understood why, and, what happened, and saw the episodes back and stuff, it made more sense what unfolded.
Yeah, and going back to the pre, I'm curious to ask a lot of people this, when you're sizing people up under us, was someone that you viewed as a big threat, or someone you thought, oh, I think this person could win?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to look at Jake like that, because he's just huge, and he's like a Jonathan style, he's big and he's strong, and he was very open about his alliance with Alex and Sophie, and he just, that's when I knew it was going to be, I knew I was in trouble when he was as vocal about his alliances as he was, because I thought, well, I can't wiggle into that. I see what's going on. He's got the bromance with Alex, and he's got the thing with Soph, and then Jeremiah's definitely with Soph. So where does that leave me and Nicole? And at the time, I thought I had something going with Alex. So I don't know. I think I didn't have any experience with the other people from the other tribes. And so I can only speak to the people on my tribe. And I think when I was on the season, obviously now that, when he got medevac and all that, like, that changed everything. Who knows how he would have done. But I do think that when I was on my tribe, I thought, well, Jake's going to go far, because he's just big and he's going to be able to beat everyone. I mean, he hulked that ladder out of the sand on that one challenge. Like, it was insane. It was like superhero moment, and I thought, this guy's going to be a force. That was kind of why I was gunning for him too, because I thought, we cannot take this guy to the merge. We cannot, because he is going to beat everyone all the time on every individual challenge. I'm looking around at us. I'm like, I'm tiny. Sophie's tiny. Jeremiah's tiny. Like, we're never going to beat this guy. So it was part of the reason I was kind of gunning for him, because I thought he might do kind of well.
Yeah, and obviously we need to talk about the whole pre-gaming shenanigans of it all. So how do you think that it played a factor in the season? Because you said, Jake was so open about his alliance with Soph and Alex. So do you think that happens in the pregame? That's what started it?
There were definitely things, and I can't speak to a lot of it because it's just not something we can talk. We're supposed to talk about, but I have already talked about this openly after Sage came out with some of the stuff she talked about, because she was very directly like, it was this person, it was this person, it was this person. There were more people that she didn't name that were part of the whole thing, and I won't get into names either, but I will say that stuff happens in pregame. And for those of you guys who have not watched any of the other people talking about this or don't understand what we're talking about, basically you're in a camp called Ponderosa for a few days prior to filming, because they have to test medical and they have to make sure you're not going to go out and murder anybody, and all the things, like, make sure that you're going to be okay out there. And so it's they're sort of stepping you down into being on the island. And so you're not, their number one rule is you just do not talk. You don't talk to each other, because again, what I mentioned earlier was even just a little eye contact it feels huge out there when you have no devices, you have no phone, you don't even have a watch, you don't know what time it is, you don't know anything. So any little interaction with somebody, you don't have your people around you don't know any of these people, and they're all going to be fighting you for $1 million. So anything you can do to make a connection feels huge. So any kind of talking, that's why it's so bad. Because people are like, fans are like, well, why does it matter? Who cares? It's, it's for $1 million, and it's a social game, and these are social people, and they're going to talk, and it's going to happen. So it's either got to be you let it happen and you just say free for all, go crazy, build your alliances, or you can't let it happen at all. And on our season, it was in the middle there. You probably heard that there were a couple of people booted. Jeff's been very open about that. And, we only had 2 alternates. So what do you do with the other ones that are chatting? Like, do you cancel the season? And like, you can't. And so we kind of had to just all roll with it and figure that the most egregious people had gotten shipped home. But there were definitely things. There were definitely things. And that being said, loved being a part of it. Love CBS. This is not CBS's fault. This is everybody knew the rules. I chose to abide by the rules. There were some other people who chose to abide by the rules 100% and did not even dip a toe into trying to mess with that. And then there were other people who bent it a little bit, and then there were people who bent it a lot. And I think it played out. So yeah.
And do you think the level it went to in your season, was it specific to your season that you think your season was a lot worse than other seasons? Do you think this doesn't happen every season?
If I were to guess, I mean, obviously never been on anything before. But the people that have come to me and, asked me, and again, I usually am very just, I don't talk about the people or the names or anything like that. But the previous cast members that have said, this is horrible, I'm sorry this happened. They said, we didn't have anything like that on our season. And we did have a couple of alternates from previous seasons. I mean, Sage was an alternate, I think, on 47. And then I feel like there was another one too, who was an alternate previously, maybe Yellow Sophie. Yeah. Yellow Sophie. Yeah. So, the take from them was, this, I think Sage said 47. If 47 was like a 1 on a 1 to 10 or like a 0.5 from people, it wasn't even talking. She said it was like people making eye contact at the water cooler, and they were like, stop, so that was the extent of it, at least according to, what she was saying about 47. She's like 49 was a 9. I mean, it was pretty bad at times. So I think, I don't know what's happened on previous seasons. I don't know if it's a normal thing to have happen. I know that if it is a normal thing that it happens, it shouldn't, because we want as fans and as players, as a player, you want a 1 in 18 chance. That's all I wanted. I don't need to win. If I'm not going to win, I'm not going to win, but I want to go out there and have absolute equal footing from the time you hit the map. That's all. It's a game. We should have that, right? But more than that, for CBS's, needs, and for ours as fans, you want all those relationships to develop on camera, because that's what's the beauty of this game. If people have something going on before, even if it's a minor little pinky swear before the game starts, that's not a true, authentic development of relationship on camera for the world to see. And that's what Survivor is. So if it's happened in other seasons, which it probably has, I don't know. I hate that it has, though. For those of us who really love this show and respect it for what it is and want to be part of it for what it is, it's disappointing to think that people might be doing that.
Yeah, and then obviously since season 50, returning player season, it can be very different. People have relationships for decades, like you mentioned, so it's different returning players.
It is different. I think if it's a returning player season, you kind of can't, you just have to say it's a free for all. You do what you want to do, because they don't necessarily know which tribes people are going to be on. So you might build this great relationship in Ponderosa and then find out you're on opposite tribes. You just got to get to the merge, But I think it is different with returning players. They have each other's cell phone numbers. They've hung out for years. They're, buddies. They've been at each other's weddings and things. Like you can't contain that, but that's very different than a new player season.
Yeah, so let's go off that topic. Let's get back into you. So at the time you were voted out, who did you think was going to win the game? Did you ever predict that Savannah was going to be the one to go on to win?
At the time I went out, I didn't have any information about what was going on the other tribes. So I had no earthly idea what was going to happen. So for me, I was rooting for Alex, because regardless of the fact that I got a little stab in the back from him, I still loved him. I was like, I felt like he was put in a position where he really couldn't. Had he sided with me, it would have been one or the two of us next, because we still wouldn't have had the majority. And then the jig would have been up that he wasn't working with them. So I think his hand was forced. And I still truly think that that's the case with him. I think he probably wanted to actually work with me like we planned on doing. But I think with everything else that was going on, I don't think it would have not been good gameplay on his part to stick with me. So I didn't know what was happening on the other tribe. So I could only kind of look at the dynamics of my tribe. And so I was rooting for Alex. I thought Jake had a good chance of going pretty far because of his strength and, all of that side of things. Looking at the other tribes, though, I think Savannah to me felt like a threat, because I saw her, even when you just kind of see people walking around, you can see the ones that are pretty strong, and just kind of move with authority and are observant. And everybody was observant to an extent out there during pregame, because, it's all you can do is kind of look around and try to judge people and figure out, who you think is going to be good at what. And so I remember thinking Savannah looked like somebody who had either played soccer or just something. I thought the same thing about Yellow Sophie, because I thought, they both have strong legs and it seems like they could be a contender. And then had no idea what she was like from a personality perspective, but she's pretty and she seems like somebody that's got a nice smile that people would connect with. So I think she felt like a threat to me just early on. I just remember we were at our 3 mats when we first hit the beach, and somewhere in there we kind of all made eye contact with each other, and she just she gave me a big smile, and she was sweet when we were on the mat for our challenges and we just kept losing. I don't know if you remember the scene where it was like they could have given us the coconuts on that challenge to have to carry and all of that, just to put the nail in the coffin on Kella. We still managed to lose it for ourselves anyway. But, the fact that they chose the other tribe and everybody just looked at us and was like, we feel for you guys. And I just remember she was one of those ones where she was like, man, so I don't know. She always felt like kind of somewhat of a threat, but I was just basing that on just almost nothing, because I'd had no interaction with them.
So now, having watched the season back, Savannah won. What do you think of her as a winner, and how does she compare to other winners?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I did watch the season, but I will say it was hard for me to watch the season. So I didn't watch it with the magnifying glass that you might, as somebody who's not on the show. It's tough to watch your friends keep going with the party after you're gone. And so I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't even really watch I watched the first episode because we all were there together. We got to, watch it as a screening party. So we all got to see the first episode together. And so I saw that one. And then 2, I was like, kind of watching through one, like closed eye, and then the rest of the season was a little bit like that too. We were playing watch parties almost every week with the band. And so it's really hard during those to absorb what's actually happening. You see bits and pieces, like you see, oh, so-and-so won the challenge. Oh, there's a conversation going on that everybody's all of a sudden got really quiet, paying attention to, but you see it in bits and pieces. So I don't know that I can speak to how she relates to, previous winners and things like that, but she's clearly strong. She's good at challenges and she plays a good social game. And that is in addition to being young and pretty and all these things, like that's a triple threat situation. So I would say, she's one that people probably should have been keeping an eye on all along, because of those reasons. But I don't know how she stacks up against other people, because I didn't see enough of the season to really make a judgment call on that.
Based on
Plus,
your
you never
own
know.
experience-
What you see is such a teeny bit of what actually happened. It's really hard to talk about people's games because you don't know what actually happened. I mean, they cobble so much together. Some of the conversations related to me were like, I don't even think that was about, I think that conversation was about someone else, and they sort of make it, look like it's what it is. It's just, that's TV. That's good TV. They're wizards at what they do. Somehow they made me look like a horrible bitch. And I was like, how did they do that? I'm so nice. But truly though, they're able to do some magic wizardry. So it's really hard to know how good people's games really are based on the edit that they get.
Well, obviously the producers saw something in her to bring her back immediately, so they must love her.
Yeah.
So
For sure. I mean, she's super lovable. And so is Rizzo. Everybody in our cast. The thing that CBS, one of the things they do very, very well, casting, they do a very good job with casting. They put a lot of time and energy. It was one of the coolest things about going through this experience for me, was getting to see a little peek behind the curtain of how much they care. They put us through so much, and they do it because they want to make sure that they are picking 18 of the absolute best people to interact with each other and to create great television for the fans, and who are going to be fun and inspirational to people out there. They do such a good job of putting cast members on this show that I don't think anybody would have been a bad winner. I think anybody on our cast who ended up winning, I would have said, congratulations, you killed it. And that's how I feel about Savannah. I'm like, you did a great job. And I think that they do love her, and we all love her. We all love everybody in our cast, regardless of what happens on the show. It's just it's a game show. You can't feel, I'm disappointed in some of the pregame stuff, but I'm not disappointed in the gameplay or any of that, or anything anybody said about me or any of that on the island, because it's a game. Everybody's doing what they got to do.
So based on your own experience, what advice would you give to future players?
Ooh, good question. I think don't go in. How do I articulate this the right way? I think
thought you were going to say don't pregame.
Well, yes, definitely don't pregame. Please don't pregame. For the good of the show, don't pregame. But I think beyond that, going in and listening more than you speak is a really good path forward. That's a good path forward in life. I tend to be like, la, 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 la. As soon as I think I got a beat on something, I'm like off to the races. I want to talk it out. I'm an Aquarius, and I don't know anything about astrology signs, but my sweet little Jeremiah from my tribe, who I love to death, told me all about it. He's like, you're an Aquarius. You just have to process stuff out loud. The problem with that is that if you do that on Survivor, everybody knows what you're thinking. And so I would say zip it for, especially in the early stages, until you have a solid alliance. You don't want to go telling people all the things that you're thinking, or the idols that you found, or the advantages you found, or any of those things, until you really know that you can trust that person. And trust is a word that I said on my season. It has no place in this game, because you cannot trust anyone. You can only trust your own gut. But in reflecting on my thoughts on that, I think it's less about can you trust somebody, and more can you predict their behavior. So if you think you can predict somebody's behavior, you're probably not going to get blindsided by them. You probably are not going to be on the wrong end of on the losing end of a vote because of something they told you. So it's less about trust and more about predictability. And so I think if people can, like I say, keep quiet at the beginning, observe, be kind of the one that nobody thinks about putting their name down because they're not really a threat at the beginning, sort of play the middle a little bit. But as soon as you find your people and feel like you can trust their behavior, that's when you need to start, sharing the things. And as soon as you can share something of significance with them, then they feel like, okay, I can trust this person back. And I think that would be probably the way that I would edit my game if I went back in, as I would just sit back a little bit. It might drive me absolute freaking bonkers. Be like, oh, this shelter really sucks. But what what is it you want me to do to help? You know, so I don't know. I think that'd be my best advice though, is just, listen more than you speak, at least early on. And, learn how to trust your gut and find predictable behavior in a very unpredictable environment.
So what was your favorite part of the whole Survivor experience?
Wow. On the island or off, like the whole thing, everything,
The whole
start to
experience.
finish? Wow. The community, the Survivor community, the fans, I cannot get enough. Like I said, these watch parties and getting to, I love it when my band gets to play, but even if I'm just there, it's connecting with fans who have come together because of a television show and are so cool to talk to and so interesting and from so many different walks of life. And then the cast members are all, like I said, they put so much time and energy and money into casting. These cast members are amazing humans with cool stories and lots of, willingness to share and be vulnerable with the world and be just model good behavior for being a human on the planet, interacting with each other. I think the community has been the best part of this whole thing. And CBS did that. CBS created something out of nothing and has made something massive out of it that has been good for a lot of people. And I think it's cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, a lot of people answer that question with, the relationships they've made from the show. So who are some of the closest people you've made from your season?
From my season, I think Nicole is probably my closest. Now, we spent a lot of time together because we got voted out together, right? So we were both really early out. And so we had the most time to get to know each other and the most to process probably early on. And then, after that, we had Jeremiah join us. So I'm very close to him too. And then, we had Shannon and Jason and Matt and like these guys. So I feel like those pre-merge people have their own sort of special bond, and probably the post-merge people have their own special bond. So my pre-merge buddies, I've always felt very close to them. Even when we don't talk, I haven't talked to Matt in a while, and I know I could call him any day and he could call me, and we'd go stay at each other's houses if we need to. Like, it just feels like we went through, all 18 of us went through something together that nobody has gone through. Not even a different season. Every season has their own set of challenges and experiences and adventures and relationships and hurt and pain and love and all these things. So I think everybody on my season, if any of them called me and needed anything, I would be there in a second. If they're like, I need a place to stay or I need anything, I would be there for any of them. So I think that on some level, I love all of them and I'm close to all of them. I think I talk the most probably to Nicole. I talked to Sage a fair amount just because we talked a lot about some of the stuff that was going on. But yeah, Jawan is a beautiful human being. Like everybody, all of them are great. All of them are great.
Yeah, so far just Savannah and Riz are the only two have returned to reality TV. Who do you most want to see get another chance on Survivor or any show from your cast?
Besides myself, I would love to see Nicole go back. I love Nicole. I love her personality. I don't think we got enough Nicole because it was hard to get to know her, and the way that she was edited, they showed her spitting the water in Jeremiah's eye, and it's so funny. Like he asked her to do that. It wasn't like she just did it out of like, oh, Jeremiah, it was, so I think her personality is just so cool. That girl is just like a no nonsense, just, say it how it is, super funny, very young and like worldly for her few years on the planet. I love her. So I would like to see some more Nicole for my own selfish reasons, because I would just like to watch her on television. She's just fun. She'd be really cool on like on like a Big Brother or something like that. I think she'd be really good at something like that.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that you're keen to play again. Is there any other show that you'd be interested in doing, or is it just Survivor for you?
No, I really actually originally thought that The Amazing Race was the thing that I was most cut out for. And Survivor opportunity came my way. And so I was definitely like, yes, please. That being said, I would still really like a shot at The Amazing Race, because I think that one is a little more my skill set, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, I can suffer, I can dig deep. I don't have to, I don't even get hangry if I'm not eating. Like, it's fine. I can deal with any of that kind of stuff. So I think that show for me would be really, really compelling. as an opportunity to get to play something that would just be so much fun for me as a human to get to experience and test myself.
Do you have a partner? Is that Nicole?
Oh, Nicole would be fun. She would be fun. I've had a couple people that that I think would be interesting, and probably a couple that you wouldn't know, but then there's a couple that you might. There's a girl that and we've not known each other all that long, but we're actually thinking about throwing in an audition tape because we just immediately, like, some people, you know how you meet them and you're just like, you're my people. You just feel like you've known them forever. We kind of had that experience. So her name's Jenny, and she's on Fear Factor this season. And she's
Okay.
a little cute, skinny, little red-haired girl, and she's just a ball of energy. And she's like me. She's in her 40s, and everybody underestimates her. She's tiny, but she killed it on Fear Factor, and she's a little force of nature. I just really enjoyed her. So we're thinking about maybe throwing a tape. Bryce and I talked about throwing in a tape because he's also so much fun. I just want somebody that for me, you know, selfishly, I want somebody that is strong and is not going to give up. I don't care if they're the strongest or the smartest or the best at things, but I want them to always be willing to keep going until, you know, till Phil comes and pulls you out of the water and says everybody else is in and it's dark and we got to take, you know, I wouldn't give up on anything. And I think somebody having that mentality, and that's fun. It's fun to hang around, because people always felt like somebody should develop a dating app that's just based on humor, because I feel like if your sense of humor matches up, you can stick through anything. I don't care what you look like. If I think you're funny, I will love you forever, you know? And so I think that finding somebody who matches energy on like a humor perspective, because I just look at this whole world like it's just ridiculous. So because it's a laugh or cry situation every time you look at all these things we go through in life. And so I'm just one who looks at it and laughs at almost everything. And so it was so funny that I got the edit I did on Survivor, because I was like, they didn't show that side of me at all. I mean, I was telling all kinds of poop stories and like all kinds of ridiculous things that would have shown a lot more about who I actually am. So I think finding a partner for The Amazing Race, it would have to be somebody that's just fun, that is, you know, doesn't take themselves too seriously and is okay living this life with all of our warts and mistakes and everything else.
Yeah, and you mentioned Big Brother before. I just briefly want to touch on Big Brother because this is ultimately a Big Brother podcast. So do you have any familiarity with Big Brother? Have you ever watched the show?
I've watched it, but it's been a really long time. And I'm at least somewhat familiar, but I'm not caught up on what the new world of Big Brother looks like.
What about season 25 when Suri was on? Did you dip your toes in that at all, or not?
I didn't, but should I? Is it worth a watch?
If you're a Suri fan, I would say absolutely, yeah.
What if you're not a Suri fan? I mean, I like Suri. I think she's great, but like as a season, is it a good season?
No. No.
That's great.
No,
so which season should I watch? If I was gonna go watch one season, what's my season?
I would say if you want to watch the modern game 26, 2 years ago, I would watch that one if you want to keep up with the modern game. Yeah.
Great. I'll dip in and see. I'm intrigued by Traders as well. I think that one's an interesting new development, new kid on the block when it comes to reality TV, but people are enjoying it. So that's one that I'd like to dig into a little bit too.
Yeah, so I was going to say, other than Survivor, what other reality shows are you into?
You know, I think Survivor and Amazing Race have been kind of my go-tos. I don't watch a lot of TV. I did tell them when they cast me, I said, listen, you know, the 4 shows that I watch are Amazing Race, Survivor, Veep, and Silicon Valley. End of list. And so I had a stint with Arrested Development a while back, and that's pretty much it. And so I'm busy, you know, I'm touring. I got this company I run. I run all the time. It's like an episode while I watch dinner, you know, once or, you know, a few times a week kind of a thing. So it's hard to get through seasons of things. So I haven't watched a lot of reality TV. I'm familiar with some stuff. I tried to give The Summit a go. I thought it was terrible. So I gave up on that one. I watched half the season. I still had no idea what they were trying to accomplish. I'm like, they're trying to get to the top of something, but they're voting off the strong people, which will help them get there. I don't understand it. So I gave up on that one. And I really haven't dipped into Big Brother. And I don't know. I know there's a lot of them out there. You know, I've watched a little bit of Love Is Blind here and there. And did you ever see the one? This is a funny one, and it was awful. I don't even remember what network it was on. So sorry if it was CBS, but it was the one where it was women who wanted to date younger men. Do you remember this? And they got all these cougar style, like 50 and up women who were beautiful and, you know, just like very put together, and they wanted to date younger guys. And then they lined everybody up and they all had blindfolds on. They all took their blindfolds off and it was their sons. It was all their kids. So they're all dating each other. It was so
there's
bad.
a show that's premiering this week on Netflix. It's called Age of Attraction, and you're dating people, you don't know how old they are.
Oh, so
That's
is it
during
kind
this
of a
week
Love
on
is
Netflix.
Blind thing where it's like you can't see them, or?
No, you can see them. You just don't tell them how old you are.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I might be in for that.
I'm
I like
I'm
that
watching
super
that.
dramatic ridiculousness. I'd
Yeah,
at
it's
least
called
give it an
Age
episode
of
or two.
Attraction. It premieres on Wednesday.
Age of Attraction. Oh, I did watch one. I was introduced. Okay, this was pretty funny. So I went to Florida, to the Orlando area for the premiere of 50 with the Celebrity Weekend people. I don't know if you know those guys, but
Yeah.
they do some great stuff for raising money for charity and stuff. So anyway, I went down for that. And so they do a big slumber party with all the reality people at the night before the premiere. And one of their traditions is that they will sit around the night before everybody goes to do the thing, and they'll watch this show called, it's called like Naked Attraction or something like that, very similar to what you were talking about name wise, which is what made me think of it. And what it is, are you familiar with this show? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not, no.
Okay. So it's done in the UK. I don't know if they still do it anymore. But what it is you have 6 people lined up. It's a dating show. There are 6 people lined up, and they're behind these little slidey platforms, almost like a peep show platform that would kind of like the wall would come up, you know, and you'd see the stuff. So they will they will lift the platform on all 6 of these contestants, and there's one like, you know, main contestant that's choosing who they want to date. So the 6 people that want to be the datee are on these platforms. And the little door raises up and it shows you basically their naked body all the way up to their crotch. And then the host goes around and they judge. They're like, what do you think of this vulva? Is it the right shape? Tell me more about this person's penis. And it goes down their whole thing, and they judge each other's all their genitalia first. And then the thing keeps sliding up until eventually by like the 5th or 6th question, they get to the face. And so then they get to see their faces. Nobody gets to talk. And then the very final thing is that whoever's left that hasn't been voted off yet, because this person is taking these people off based on like how their genitalia and how they look and all these things. And when they get down to the final couple of people, they have to choose who they're going to date. Well, then the contestant who's choosing the person they want to date has to also go get naked, walks out fully naked on TV, and they're all standing there fully naked, and then they decide who they want to date, and then they go on a date together, and they walk off like naked as the camera's like zooming in on their butts and being like, "Oh, look at a butt!" Oh, this one, it is. I couldn't stop watching. I was like, this show, man, I could stay up all night watching. This is ridiculous, but also so funny. So anyway, there you go. Naked Attraction, your next binge watch.
Okay, I'll put it on the list. I don't know how we got off on that tangent.
Reality shows, you started this. This is your doing.
All right, just a few more questions and we'll wrap up.
Sure.
So I'm curious, how has your personal life or your career, you know, with the band and everything been impacted by your time on Survivor?
TBD, I think it's still pretty early, right? But definitely got a lot of new fans. I mean, my social media channels that was helpful, especially YouTube. I think I went from previous, before Survivor, I was like 800 subscribers, and now I'm like 35,000 or something like that. Wow. So it's made a significant jump since the show, especially specific to YouTube. People are finding they're coming. In fact, we had a bunch of people at the show last night that were big Survivor fans and had seen me play in Dallas at one of the watch parties. And then they came to the Austin show as well. So I'm starting to see some of that where they maybe saw me at a watch party and now they're coming to just a regular Trashy Annie show on a regular Saturday. So I think it's, it's a snowball effect with all that, because then a few of them come and then they bring their friends, and that's how it goes with the music world. But yeah, it's been really cool to kind of watch it and play around with some stuff. I don't know that, Survivor fans and live music fans, I don't know, there's some crossover in there somewhere, but these are fans who like watching a TV show. And so that means you're at home. So going out and seeing live music, I mean, like I said, there's crossover, but it's not like 100% of Survivor people are big, rock and roll fans who want to go rage at a Trashy Annie show, but there's definitely some crossover there. And it's just been cool to interact with a lot of people that I might not have otherwise, and expose them to one, who I am as a human being, which has been a fun journey to be able to talk about my origin story and like how I grew up on food stamps and welfare, and built a company kind of out of nothing, and started a rock band in my 40s. Like, it's been fun to be able to have a bigger microphone to share that story with people. It's less for me about how many fans do I get out of it. And again, back to the reason I went on Survivor in the first place, which to inspire people to do things that scare them or that they don't think they can do. So in that regard, I think it's just given me a bigger microphone to talk about that message. And I think that's been really cool.
You mentioned Over the Edge before. Did you go to that in December?
Is that the one that's the Celebrity Weekend people? Is that what it's called? Yeah, Over the Edge, right? I think they call it something different now. I didn't, but I will this year. The band's going to play this year. It's gonna be
I was going to ask because I want to go to that every year. I've never been, but
you should come this year. It's going to be a big one. They've got a lot of people coming. You got to come. It's going to be so much fun. I think we're going to play on Friday night. I'm trying to Sifu's going to come and play with us. Steven from my season is going to come and play with us. And there's just going to be tons of reality people there. And everybody that I've interacted with that's gone to that thinks that is the best weekend. It's so much fun. So I'm trying to tell all my cast members, like, come with me. This will be so much fun.
Yeah, I'm in the Jersey and New York area. Do you ever have any shows in that kind of area or no?
We do. Yep. We played Dingbats up in New Jersey last year, and then we've played in New York City a couple of times, and we'll be back there for sure this year. Yeah, we're starting to crack into the Northeast. I hadn't toured up there because it's really hard to get the gear all the way from Texas all the way up there, and I'm doing all the driving of the gear. So we'd focused more on the Southwest and then kind of California, and so now we're sort of cracking into the Northeast. So yeah, we will definitely be back. It would be so much fun to have you at a show.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you, Annie? You have lots of gigs coming up. So what's next for you?
Yeah, we got a whole slew of touring going this year. I'm writing some new music that's a little more, I don't know, like EDM style stuff, which should be fun, kind of a departure from my current thing. So I've got some new music coming out. We'll see. TBD on. Maybe I'll apply for Amazing Race. Maybe we'll see my face on something else. Would be amazing.
And where can people find you and the band and all your stuff online?
Everything's under Trashy Annie. So I have a website, trashyannie.com, and that'll take you anywhere you need to go. But all the streaming platforms, everything's under Trashy Annie. All the social media is either Trashy Annie or Trashy Annie Music. So it's pretty easy to find.
All right, Annie, thank you so much. You were the first person I had on this season, so this was a great start for the rest of the season. And it was a pleasure talking with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're up to next.
Thank you. I can't wait to meet you in person. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It'll happen one day if it's at OT.
Yes, it will. It'll be in December. December, you got to come. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.